relation to LEAP, and just to give you an overview of where things are going. So first of all, I'd just like to introduce myself and the team here. My name is Dara Page. I'm the Programme Manager in the EPA's Office of Environmental Enforcement in the Licence Enforcement section. I'm joined by Peter Cunningham and Michelle McKim, who have been working on this project for the past while. So our purpose here today really is just to give you all an overview of the changes that are happening. And as I'm sure many of you know, we have been providing public access to information up to now through the EPA offices. So any member of the public can go into one of the EPA offices to access all of the information relating to any enforcement activities on any of the files. This project is moving all of that information online. It won't be putting any additional information online, but we'll be changing the way that people access it. So we're going to give you an overview of how that works and what that will look like in practice. So the format for today is that Peter here is going to give a presentation lasting about approximately 30 minutes that will give you an overview of LEAP and of the process and what's been happening and what's going to happen. We will then have an opportunity at the end for Q&A, and Michelle is going to moderate that. So what I would ask is, because of the large number of people attending, we're not able to do it. We're not able to invite people to make comments directly, but what you can do is submit your questions into the chat box there, and they will come to us. We will review them and we will try to answer as many as we possibly can. I would say that, I suppose, just in relation to the questions, we're here to talk about LEAP today, so if you can keep your questions related directly to that. And also, we won't be commenting on any specific or individual licenses here at this stage. So again, you know, we can discuss those matters outside. You can discuss those with your inspectors, but for the purposes of today, we'd ask you to keep it on the questions related to LEAP itself. So with that, I'm going to hand over to my colleague, Peter Cunningham, who's going to give an overview of LEAP and to give you a briefing on where things are at with it. So, thank you, Peter.
Thank you, Dara. I'm just going to open up our presentation now, and it will be a little bit detailed, so apologies for that, but it's important that all of the relevant information is presented to you, and hopefully this recording, when it is released, will be useful for reference purposes. So here it comes now. Okay, so as Dara said, this is a briefing on our new LEAP Online system. Here we go. So the outline of the presentation is fairly simple. The first few moments are going to talk about what is LEAP Online and why is it happening. And after that, I'll get into the details of how LEAP will work. I'll be covering each of the issues on the right-hand side as we go forward. So first of all, what is LEAP Online? It is a system that provides for online access to the regulatory records that are held by the EPA that are in the public domain, and that's an important issue which I'll be addressing throughout the presentation. I'd stress, as Dara mentioned, that this information has previously been available to the public, but in EPA offices, and it remains so for now. Regulatory records are the formal compliance and enforcement correspondence that is exchanged between the EPAs and licensed operators. And when I say licensed in this context, I refer to any other permits or authorizations that are issued by the EPA as well. So in other words, all of our regulated operators. Regulatory records are the records that document the compliance assessment and enforcement process in relation to the licenses that you have. It's no harm to say what LEAP Online is not at this point. It does not affect in any way how you comply with your license or how you interact with the EPA. That will continue as always. And in particular, it does not affect how or when you're required to submit your reports or notifications or any other formal correspondence for that matter. Nothing changes in that way. This is all about the other side, the public access to the information that is generated through this process. Now, regulatory records are considered to be environmental information as defined in Article 2.3 of the Aarhus Convention of 1998 and enacted in Irish law by the AIE regulations. Environmental information is the primary reason why the work that we do and the interactions we have with licensees are in the public domain. I'm not going to go through this in detail, but this is the definition of environmental information that's set out in the AIE regulations. It is very comprehensive, and it refers to environmental information as being any information in written, visual, oral, electronic, or any other material form covering all of this, all of these subject areas, all the way from reporting on states of the environment through emissions and so on. And it in sub-item C there, I've highlighted a couple of phrases which speak directly to the regulatory interaction, licensing and enforcement, so on. So this is the reason why the work that we do is in the public domain, as I said. So just to summarize the legal and policy basis for providing access to the public. First of all, the EPA's policy since we were founded in 1993 has always been one that included full transparency and open access to our records, given that we are the custodians of that information on behalf of the public. The Aarhus Convention, as I mentioned, and the AIE regulations enact that policy effectively in law. The Freedom of Information Act is also a mechanism for getting access to the information that we have. I think it's important to say that LEAP Online provides a means of delivering on that first commitment in Article 1, where member states are required to deliver a guarantee of the rights of access to environmental information. That is the fundamental reason for this, as I said earlier. So LEAP Online is not by any means the first initiative that we've taken in expanding public access to the information that we are the custodians of. If you go back to 2006, the license application process was placed online for the first time. And since then, I'm not going to list them all there, but we've made a number of initiatives over time. I would single out the 2013 initiation of our LEAP portal based on our EPA offices, reflecting the technology at the time. It was possible for any member of the public to come into our offices and see the information that we're now discussing. In 2016, we began publishing some compliance and enforcement records. We called them the keystone documents because they were the ones that we considered would most comprehensively show the compliance situation through our regulated operators. It included EPA site visit reports and the public responses to those, and some other documents there as well. That will be included within LEAP Online from this point on. But as I said, it went out in 2016. Since then, we've introduced the National Enforcement Priority Sites list in 2017. In 2020, we began publishing more details about compliance and enforcement statistics. And as I said, now in 23, LEAP Online is the next of those. And it will replace LEAP portal available in our offices and also the keystone documents. These will be discontinued when LEAP comes on stream. So now to move into the meat of the presentation, how LEAP Online will work. First of all, the categories of EPA licenses and permits that are covered. Pretty much all of the regulation that we do is in here. Dumping at sea, the various types of industrial licenses, radiological protection licenses are included in a minimal way, but this is the first time that has happened. And urban wastewater is covered, and also waste management. Drinking water information is available in another part of the EPA's website and has been for years now, but it will be incorporated within LEAP Online in due course. This is an important slide. This is when LEAP Online is commencing. It's launching in two phases. Phase 1 is this quarter, early March, I believe, is the most likely date for that. And that will cover information predominantly that is already on our website in one form or another. Details about the license site, and the application for licenses, the versions of licenses and that kind of thing. The other components available in phase 1 are site visit reports and licensees' public responses to those reports. And also, and this is the main change now from the current situation, we're going to be publishing licensee returns as well as monitoring reports. This will include site updates, requests for approval, and notifications of various kinds and so on, including EPA's requests for information and the responses to those. Phase 2 will be later in the year, quarter 3, we currently believe, and that will bring through all of the rest of our formal enforcement correspondence into Leap Online. That will include incidents and updates to those incidents, complaints with very limited details. I'll mention that later on. Non-compliances, license change requests under condition 1.2 and 1.4. These are not license review applications or the technical or clerical amendments. That will be done separately. These are the changes that are allowed under your license. Most licensees will be familiar with these. We're publishing meeting records, and then compliance investigations. Compliance investigations, as you will all understand, are the actions that we take where a licensed operator requires assistance and additional attention to get back into compliance. That correspondence generally includes CI actions and instructions set by the EPA and even messages from operators that respond to those through the process of getting back into compliance. The other two categories are EPA initiated correspondence that will be issued from time to time, and also third-party correspondence of a public nature. This would include public representatives' submissions and interactions with environmental groups and other types of public advocacy groups and so on. So when phase 2 is completed, this will be pretty much everything of a formal nature that we hold in relation to regulation. So again, how will it work? We will be introducing a deferral period, or operating a deferral period before anything is uploaded. So prior to publication of any record, there will be a minimum 30 calendar days deferral period. And that applies after the issue of a record by an EPA inspector, such as a site visit report, or the receipt of a licensee submission, such as a licensee return monitoring report and so on. This deferral period is precisely in line with the timescale for requests for access to records provided under both the AIE and the Freedom of Information Act. So anyone can currently make an application under those acts, and they will see information in the same timescale. There's a couple of exceptions to the 30-day rule that's worth mentioning. First of all, dumping at sea commencement notices are published 1 day after their receipt. This is for the information of the public locally to let them know that something is happening there. And the other main area is where we've received information from an operator about an incident. The updates to those that are made after that will publish on the next day rather than waiting an additional 30 days. And equally, when we close an action or a return or some other simple action like that, the updates to that will publish the following day also. Moving on, I'll speak specifically about the EPA site visit report and the licensee's public response to that. This is something we introduced in 2016 when site visit reports were first published, and it provides that operators who wish to do so, they may submit a licensee public response to a site visit report. It is the right of response for operators to our findings, as detailed in the report. Couple of characteristics of the licensee public response. The content is entirely a matter for the operator, but we will obviously need to subject that to a fairly basic review of suitability for going on to our public website, and I'll talk about that toward the end. From our point, EPA considers that the licensee public response is an excellent opportunity for the operator to talk to their neighbours and the wider public about what they're doing about the actions that we have specified in the site visit report. Give your neighbours information about your responses, the activities you're going to do, the timescales for addressing the actions, and so on. But again, I'd stress that ultimately it's a matter for the operator to fill in the right response in the way you see best. Talk about the simultaneous upload. Since we are moving to a 30 calendar day publication deferral period, it is important that licensees understand that simultaneous publication of your response, which we understand is something that most licensees would like to be able to do, that will be possible provided that you get your response into us to allow our review of suitability for publication in time. To be confident that it will be published concurrently, this should be submitted within 21 days of the issue date of the report. If it comes in slightly after that, say within 21 and 28 days after issue, it's possible that it could be published simultaneously, but it's not certain. So please get it in within the 21 days if you can. A licensee public response that comes in too late to be published simultaneously will be published the day after it's reviewed by us. So I hope that's clear. The look back period. When we are publishing this information to LEAP, we are not going to publish the entire holding going back to 2013 when LEAP portal was first started under our record management policy, and this aligns with the period that licensees are required to retain records on site themselves. That is a period of 7 years. So we are going to go with a 7-year look back period. So you can see in the table the effects of this. So 7 full calendar years prior to the current year is the rule. Some categories of records may not be published either in their entirety or for the full 7 years, depending on whether or not GDPR issues are fully complied with. In some cases, earlier records may not be consistently GDPR free, and we reserve the right effectively to change those periods accordingly. So confidentiality, this will be something of great interest to operators. All of our regulatory documentation is in the public record, except where legal mechanisms for confidentiality apply. The AIE regulations and the FOI regulations, as well as the EPA Act itself, provide for this, and it applies to the broad categories of information, including information about ongoing legal investigations, correspondence from private citizens, internal business, and communications within the EPA. And the internal business would apply to licensees, obviously, as well, and also protection of confidential sources. So they are all confidential by nature. Other information that you are required to submit to us may be deemed or designated confidential on request. So the EPA provides a mechanism for you to request confidentiality for certain information that you're required to submit to us under your license. The main categories of this would be commercially sensitive information and intellectual property. The process is set out in the guidance document here, and that is available on our website. If you go to our search bar and search for the word confidential, you will find it. It involves, as I said, making a submission to the EPA, and this will be submitted to our board for decision. They are the decision makers under the Act. It is important to appreciate, though, when it comes to confidentiality, that this can be challenged under the FOI and the AIE regulations. So it's not a cast iron guarantee, and we have seen case history on that issue. Now, GDPR. This is an important consideration in relation to publication of information, as everyone is aware now. The GDPR regulation came in on the 25th of May 2018. And as with other public bodies, the EPA is committed to providing full access to information that's in the public domain, but also with complying with the GDPR regulation. And accordingly, we are committed to ensuring that our publications do not contain personal data of private citizens, or as the GDPR refers to data subjects. We do this by only processing personal data lawfully, fairly, and in a transparent manner in relation to the data subject. That's wording directly from the regulation. Lawfully and fairly includes making prior notice to those who may be involved. Lawful also is specified as includes processing that is necessary for the purposes of the legitimate interests pursued by the controller. Again, language from the GDPR. In this case, the EPA is pursuing environmental compliance. So this is the lawful reason why we will publish this data. So complying with GDPR. In order to provide access to public domain information while also complying with the GDPR regulation, the EPA carries out continual scrutiny of the submission that we receive. Our first review is to determine whether or not the submission contains anything that might fall under GDPR. If we do detect anything that we think is GDPR sensitive, we will inform the licensee of this and will reject that submission and require them, we'll identify what we consider to be the issue and we'll ask for the item to be resubmitted with that addressed. We ask licensee operators to do your part in this. When you're putting a submission to the EPA together, you should avoid publishing what might be plainly considered to be GDPR. For example, personal data like the names and addresses of correspondents, such as complainants or your neighbours who've been in touch with you, and also things you mightn't necessarily think of at first hand. For example, personal details used as labels for monitoring points, drinking water wells and that kind of thing, which might be monitoring points in your license, or noise sensitive locations, for example. We've seen that in the past. Any maps showing locations and sampling points close to individual dwellings should also be done carefully. You're invited to alert the EPA to any previous submissions that you've made that might have contained information like that, and we'll see what we can do to address it. Personal data is obviously a very broad category, but for the operation of GDPR in relation to regulatory submissions, we take the view that under the lawful purpose and lawful functions arrangements in GDPR, the professional details of responsible participants, our phrase, this relates to, first of all, the holders of licenses, or to their officers that hold responsible positions in those organizations, and equally their agents or service providers, whether they be consultants working for you, designing systems, carrying out monitoring, or whatever it might be. So the responsible people in each of those organizations, they're acting in their professional capacities in that business, which involves environmentally sensitive activities. They are not, in this context, the personal details of private citizens. And this is why GDPR constraints do not apply to the holders of responsible positions. A particular category of that are the environmental contact persons. Each licensee must maintain a list of environmental contacts who are their designated officers who are responsible for communicating with the EPA and signing off reports and so on. Licensees should avoid including the personal details of any other employees who are not directly involved in license compliance activities. So from time to time, staff on your site may be required to meet with inspectors to talk about issues or incidents that might have happened, but otherwise your employees, other than those in responsible positions, should not be identified or named in your correspondence. I think it's important to recall that licensed operators are made aware of the public status of the regulatory information that they report to us when they apply for their licenses. Our website and our licensing literature has been consistent ever since we began operations in this area, that licensed operators and their correspondence is in the public domain. It's an important point. So this actually is the detail taken down from our website. I just thought it would be worth reproducing it here in relation to this issue. the last part of the heavy detail in my presentation is just to give you a sense of the review of suitability for publication. Obviously, it's in everyone's interest that such submissions are reviewed independently to ensure that they contain nothing that's inappropriate. So your submissions must be suitable for publication in the following respects. They must be consistent with other information that you've provided to us. There shouldn't be any discrepancies or omissions that are relevant to the issue you're reporting on. And very importantly, there should be no, even accidentally, defamatory or vexatious or misleading content in your report. In other words, your report needs to be credible. It should also be free of GDPR risk content. So that's essentially it. It goes no further than that. And as I said before, other than that, the correspondence that you sent to us is a matter for yourselves to compile. It's worth mentioning, first of all, I've reproduced our process in that area on the right-hand side of this slide. If we decide not to publish a submission, we'll inform you of that. We'll reject the original submission and ask you to submit a new one addressing the issues concerned. And finally, licensees should be aware that when they're submitting formal correspondence to us, you're effectively making a legal declaration, and we will hold you to the contents of that, and we are entitled to do so. The information you submit to us under the terms of your license will be treated as your legal statement, and therefore it should be complete, accurate, and truthful. And we will, as provided for in the Act directly, we will investigate any false or misleading statements made to us. We'll take a strong approach to that. Okay, thank you very much for listening to that detail, and apologies that it was long. I'm going to give everyone a quick look at what Leap Online will look like when it goes onto our website. First of all, we wanted to ensure that Leap Online is responsive, which is the technical term for working on PCs and tablets and phones. You'll be able to use any of those devices to interact with Leap, and it will respond accordingly. So this, first of all, an easy way to find information about a particular company is to use our search bar. Type in the name and it should come up on the bar there. There will also be a position on the a link on our website that will be easily found to Leap Online, and this is what it will look like. This is the license dashboard page. It gives details of the license, the license that's currently in force, and details about the site, simple details of where it is and so on. And it gives a quick link to the contents of Leap. These are links to individual documents, and they're presented in chronological order. So you can have incidents and complaints and compliance investigation documents and so on, all within this list. This is a development from Leap in offices to make it easier to access information for users. This is the license dashboard, and this is the version for urban wastewater. You can see it's a little bit different, and it gives details about the agglomeration and the substatus, the status, substatus, and other details of the population equivalent size and design and treatment and so on. Okay, so that's urban wastewater specifically. Moving on, there's the next page along there is again licensing information. You can see which the various versions or reviews of the license that have been made, including the current one, which is referred to here as licensed. And now on to the main compliance and enforcement page. Like the initial landing page, you'll be able to search for types of record, but you'll also be able to look at them chronologically and by subject and so on. You'll also be able to see, in another innovation, you'll be able to see the license reg version that was in force at the time that document was created. You see which license it refers to, which should be very helpful. This is a site visit page. When you go in here, you will see the summary of the site visit, as well as statistics about when and where and so on. And there will be a link to the document, and there will also be a link to the licensee public response if one has been received and so on. Equally links to compliance investigations. And this is a model of Leap Online. You will be able to link from one document type to another and back again. This is a licensee return, same thing. The documents that might be attached are available and so on. And this is a request for information. We'll ask the question and the response from the licensee will be attached. This is the main compliance investigation page. If you look at the related compliance records at the bottom, you see there's a lot more detail within a compliance investigation, including the reasons for the compliance investigation in the first place, the details about likely causes and effects and outcomes and so on. Actions and instructions and associated documents are all available here. This is an example of an action and instruction, and this is a message in response to an action. This is a complaint, and I just want to highlight the fact that there's no public personal data attached to it in any way. The type, whether it be air or noise or water, whatever it might be, when it occurred, how long it lasted, and whether or not the EPA had added this to a compliance investigation. That's effectively all of the information we'll provide. So it'll give a sense of how many complaints there were, what they were about, but no further details for GDPR reasons mainly. Now, I will summarize very quickly what you've heard after that quick run through of the appearance of LEAP. LEAP Online provides for access to information that's in the public domain, and it doesn't change anything from our current arrangements, but you'll no longer need to come to an office. You can see it online. Phase 1 will launch in the next month or so. Phase 2 will be later in the year. Most content will be uploaded a minimum of 30 calendar days later. The site visit and its licensee public response will be uploaded simultaneously if we get the response in within 21 days. All of the information that LEAP contains is in the public record, except for defined confidentiality situations. And it is possible for operators to opt for confidentiality status for any particular document that they wish to. GDPR requires that you avoid personal data of private citizens or data subjects in your submissions. GDPR does not apply to the professional details of your responsible officers or your environmental contacts. Operator submissions will be reviewed to ensure that they're suitable to publish. And there's a process for dealing with that. And finally, just to emphasize again, LEAP Online will not change how you comply with your license or how you make your returns and notifications.